wonderful conversations of J-Space. I'm glad you guys are all here. What is J-Space? I know you all are asking. You're all sitting here, just not really watching us, but technically watching us. You're watching like a pre-rendered screen, so to speak. I'm a little bit enthusiastic right now because I'm very excited. I'm excited to be here and for y'all to be listening. But what is J-Space? First things first, we got to start off with introductions, okay? I'm a little bit relaxed here, all right? I'm just trying to figure things out, so to speak. It's a first episode, me and, the co-host here, which I'll let her sort of introduce herself in a second. We're new to this, right? It's a first step for the both of us. That being said,
Yeah.
we're going to start off by introduction. So my name is Justin Guerrero to be exact. I am a starving voice actor. No, I'm just kidding. A working voice actor and creator on a bunch of stuff like working on a children's book and other stuff in the background. I'm a very creative individual, so to speak. That being said, we're joined by another creative and absolutely wonderful individual and co-host, Squeaky Door.
I love that guy.
All right. This we're gonna call rollback right now.
Oh, okay. I think we should keep it. I really think we should. Squeaky Door is now a staple for this podcast.
See, this is why you have 2 hours just in case things like that happen. But anyway,
I like it.
Joined by a lovely, wonderful, creative co-host of ours. Okay, maybe host if you will. The co-host thing. It's one thing or another. Okay, but Autumn, welcome. Explain who are you, Autumn? What are you doing here?
I'm Rod, and I like to party. Please tell me you've seen Hot Rod.
I have seen it.
Okay, good. So you understand the reference.
And then I think it's followed up with "I also like to party," and it's
I
like sort of the
also
same.
like to party. No, my name is Autumn Blom, and I like to write. Have one book that's published. Have multiple in the works that have, it's the beta readers who really are keeping me not querying yet, but that's okay because I really hate that process. And I don't know. I just like to do everything creative. Obviously, this podcast is fun.
Well,
And go ahead. I don't know
sorry
what
to
to say
interrupt.
next.
Also for the viewer, it's going to be a lot of like possibly talking over. Listen, we're doing this remotely, okay? So there might be some jump ins. So I apologize for the listener if I'm a little bit neurotic and jumping in sometimes. That being said, tell us what the book is. Give us a little synopsis. I listen. I
Oh
know we're not
no.
here just to promote, but that being said, she's got to promote a little bit. Tell them about the book. Where can they find it?
Okay. Okay. Synopsis is the hardest thing to write. I think it's actually harder to write than the actual book. But the one that's published is a murder mystery. It's about an author who kind of falls into his own timeline, and whenever he does, a murder happens. But obviously, he knows that his book is not about murder, so he's trying to figure out who's killing off his characters, and it's kind of like a self-discovery, find out who the murderer is, who done it kind of mystery. And then I actually do have a poetry book that I'm about to publish. I just have to finish the cover art of that. That both of those are on Amazon. One's called Odd Sense, that's the murder mystery. Poetry book is called Put Together Words. So we'll see what comes of that. Well,
Wonderful. Look at that. We're both creative individuals that sort of met through fate. You know what I mean? We were
a
connected
fate named
through.
Jordan.
Yes, we have to shout out. It's Autumn's brother, if anything. Jordan sort of brought this, collective creativity wonder. Let's say we're patting ourselves on the
Sure.
back
Let's
here.
put it out there.
This creativity wonder, so to speak, that was sort of brought to you by Jordan Blum, an absolutely wonderful individual. Me and Jordan sort of
Depending on
became.
who you ask.
Yeah, depending on who you see, she can say that she's his brother. You know what I mean?
I'm his brother,
Or his
yeah.
sister. Sorry. I apologize for that.
It's fun.
Yeah, they're family. You know what I'm trying to say? But yeah, he brought us together, and we sort of started talking and sort of became friends. through text. And then one day we were having deep conversations, and we're like, we really want to design a podcast because we have sort of this level of connecting in terms of conversational topics that some people might be uncomfortable talking about, but we're comfortable here. So that kind of like leads me into describing what is JSpace. Why the name JSpace? Well, originally, thanks to again Autumn's brother, it was supposed to be a Justin and Jordan sort of podcast, but then it sort of led into it was meant to J as in like Justin Jordan. They both start with J, and it's our space to sort of have a conversation. So don't think like I'm taking all the name here, okay? That being said, what is JSpace? JSpace is supposed to be sort of a peer into the deep conversation, if you will, talking about life, love, as they say, the pursuit of happiness, right? Not my quote. It comes from a lot of other people, right? But yeah, it's like us sort of discussing this, our inner self, the things that we're comfortable with, uncomfortable with, and sort of being able to express ourselves and have people peer in, listen in, and I don't know, like what I would ask you for Autumn. I would have to ask you, Autumn. What do you believe? What do you want the viewer or listener to sort of gain from our podcast, or what would you like for them to even learn from the podcast, or take away, so to speak?
Ooh, loaded question. I think mainly off the top of my head, I would say to be someone who remains open-minded, empathetic, and forgiving, I guess. I feel like nowadays people are very easily getting canceled. People
Yeah.
are held to things that they said years ago that they might change their minds about. So just creating a space that is a one built on curiosity and remaining just trying to be objective in ourselves and remaining open to others' opinions and views. And even if we don't agree with them, at least hearing them out and giving them the space to figure that out on their own.
Yeah, no, I mean that sounds like a good sort of takeaway for listeners out there. I personally too hope that people take away that there's a lot of podcasts out there. The Alpha Bro, they're individuals that are just kind of out there and have this weird representation of what they think is the best representation of the self, right? And I feel like a lot of their viewpoints are skewed in terms of the way that they see women or they think men should hold themselves. I don't really agree with a lot of them, and I think that us being able to sort of step into the light and show people that it's okay to have sort of your mental health days, or for you to always kind of be wondering and pondering, like what is really, will I ever find love? What does these emotions of mine, say about me? And sort of being able to sort of look into the inner self, and be okay with your inner self, and knowing that we're all perfectly imperfect in the way that we're built. And I want people to see more comfortability in your image, in your mental health status, in being okay with saying I need help. um, I want people to listen in, see two people that are raw, that are themselves, and that are also imperfectly perfect. Um, so yeah, hopefully that's what you guys take away. That also being said, a huge disclaimer that we'll probably disclaim every time we step into an episode is that, listen, we have opinions. Again, this is a very opinion based sort of podcast. This is based off of our own self experiences. And so our viewpoints can change, right? Allow us to grow. Maybe you don't agree with us in certain ways. Comment down below. This is on YouTube, so to speak. So feel free if there's something that sort of, how would you say, you don't agree with, say it down below. Let us know how you feel. But also be respectful in the way that you're sort of discussing these particular topics. And even just comment if you agree with us or you're sort of feeling this particular sense and somebody else says something. Why don't you say something to them and sort of let's start a conversation around things like this.
Mm-hmm.
I'm also hoping for in the future that we were to bring in certain guests that would be relatively interesting in the topics that we discuss. Again, people change. Be willing to hear them out and willing to forgive. If let's say maybe we had a skew viewpoint on something like that. I think, as Autumn was saying before, not so many people are quick to sort of judge and not sort of accept people and accept, like, have this forgiving heart of being like, hey, you could have a different opinion than mine, and that's either okay, or you need to learn how to change that opinion, so to speak. What about you? How do you feel about that all?
I think everything you said is great. My main question after that is when do we get Squeaky Door as a co-host?
Squeaky door will always be there, deep down in our hearts. The
Just
lovely
ominous
thing
presence.
when recording, with a door that's, listen, I could get WD-40, right? But do we really
It's too
need another
easy.
co-host?
That's true. That's true. Maybe he's one of your special guests later on down the road. He'll make an appearance when we least want him to.
But again, let it be known that this is our sort of first podcast together. Another thing I want to re-mention: Autumn's first steps, her first toes stepping into the
Baby
podcast world.
steps. Be nice
And how
to
does that
me.
make you feel? I need to know. Tell them how you feel.
I'm just not looking forward to hearing my voice for however long this ends up being. Like the 2 seconds you hear yourself on voice text or voicemail, and you're like, how do I have friends? That's that's literally I don't even know if I'll listen to it because I might be like, actually, Justin, I changed my mind.
Oh my goodness.
We'll see.
Listen, I'm
Glad.
sure I'm sure everybody's gonna think you sound wonderful.
Oh no, that's okay. That's okay.
You know what? How about
But
this?
no,
Go ahead. Go ahead.
what?
Sorry. No, go ahead.
Well, I was gonna jump into it, but if you have something to say, then
One last thing that we have to, before we jump in the topic of the day, right?
okay.
Uh, it's just for the viewer to know. In terms of length, we're thinking possibly an hour for an episode we could go over, so don't hold us to that, okay? That being said, in terms of a schedule, we're thinking possibly once a month. We don't have a specific day, be it in the middle of the month or past that, just because we're both sort of particular working individuals in terms of our personal lives. So we're just getting things started. We'll have more of a schedule set up. So I just had to clear that up. But Autumn, you wanted to get into the subject already, so I'm gonna let you take it.
Well, I was just gonna kind of bounce off of your introduction of what we're doing, and it kind of made me think about the social media life and just having it all figured out. Everybody all has it figured out on TikTok and on Instagram, and sometimes our lives don't look that way. And that kind of is the subject of today, is being paused in life and kind of reconciling with yourself when it doesn't look the way you thought it was going to by the time you're 25 or 30, or compared to that girl on Instagram that you just can't figure out how she's making all those trips to Paris in one year? So I'll let you bounce off of that.
Yeah, no, I think everybody, we see again what people want us to see, right? We're seeing the Facebook posts, like you're saying, the Instagram posts, and yeah, how did Sally, go to Paris? Like, what the heck? Where'd she get the money? And
Right.
like, I've been working a 9 to 5, and I'm not there. Like, how is she going? Or you're
Deep
judging a
Finder.
person that sort of is handsome or pretty, and you're like thinking that they have everything figured out or that they get everything, just because the way they look, so you're automatically assuming that, oh, well, they must have a partner that's loaded, and that's not necessarily the case. I mean, in terms of social media, it's all superficial. Let's be real.
Mm.
I'm not going to be posting all the time saying, hey, look, guys, I just came back from my 9 to 5 and I'm $100 short. I think that not everybody's going to be posting about that. Listen, there are those people out there, just a quick disclaimer, but not everybody. Predominantly, everybody's just showing like their happy self. And I think maybe it's worth sort of reaching out to some of those people, right? And having a genuine conversation before you jump to a conclusion. But that kind of like leads into something else that I wanted to discuss about, and that's like sort of you comparing your life, right? Like you're having this huge comparison, a one to one. And I think that personally, that is a incorrect to like way of looking at life. You should never go to your Instagram or your Facebook and compare yourself to how that other person is or where that other person is in life. Even if you know somebody in real life and they have everything that is, like they're successful in the way that you see them being successful. I don't think it's necessarily worth you comparing yourself, because here's the thing: we all run different races, right? We're all in this race of life. We're running around, and John seems like he's, yeah, I don't know what these names are, right? But John
That's my
seems like
boyfriend.
oh, there you go. John seems like he's in first place. He's running, he's going. And meanwhile, you're there, you're running, you're in sixth place, and you're like, what the heck, right? They got the life going for them. Everything's just sort of moving in the way that they want to go. That being said, your race is different, right? You have different hurdles to jump over, right? Like it's not just a straight race there. And the best advice I can give to that, which somebody else gave me on actually another podcast, was that they told me treat life like you're a racehorse. Racehorses have blinders on the sides of their eyes. So that way,
Mm.
why? Because if they look to the left or right of them, the horses get scared of the crowds and seeing everybody and the other horses racing against them, and they sort of tend to freak out. So put the blinders on and just keep looking forward. You don't have
Hmm.
to be first. You don't have to be second. You don't have to be third. Take life at your own pace, because we're all running our own race. It rhymed. I had to say it. But how do you feel about that, Autumn?
No, I like that. There's a book that I read every year called The Courage to Be Disliked, and I do not know the names of those authors. They're if you Google it though, you'll find it. But it talks about how everybody in life is a comrade. They're not your competition. They are on the same playing field as you. It's not like an upward ladder. It's a flat surface, and someone may be a little bit more ahead of you or a little bit more behind you, but that doesn't take away from where you're at or what you're doing. And yeah, I love the analogy of the blinders because I think that is such a good representation of what we should be doing. It's not looking at other people to judge, not looking at other people to compare where we think we should be, but mainly just focusing on our own run and focusing on what we have to do to cross the finish line. It also saves you from getting into a lot of drama. I will say, like, the times that I haven't been doing that and I've been looking around, I found myself caught up in drama or gossip or things because you like start taking things personally that really are not supposed to ever be personal to begin with because they're having to do with somebody else. And yeah, it's interesting how that progresses the older you get, the more experiences you go through. You realize that you really are running your own race. You're not running anybody else's race.
Yeah, life sort of it's a beautiful thing, right? Because sometimes like we think that being the first one, right, or getting to success first means that we're going to be happier, right? And you get to the top of the mountain, you have your moment where you're happy that you climbed it, right? Or you happy that you, again, let's continue the analogy of the race, that you crossed through. But sometimes it's not always the best to be first. I mean, there's sometimes when you get there, the top can be lonely, so to speak. And something that people fail to realize, that a lot of life itself would sort of makes it interesting, would sort of makes it worth like all the experience, is the race itself, right? Like getting to the finish line, the sort of bumps in the road, the hurdles, again, that you have to jump over. When you look back at those hurdles, you look back at those things that happen in the past, it built you, right? Like you gained more muscle. You went through so many more experiences that um, now we're so worth going that you would have kind of missed out on, if you had it so easy and you were coasting through. There's something said to be, to go through struggle. And I find struggle to be beautiful, even if in the moment it sounds horrible and it looks grim. Um, it's wonderful. Again, it's a building block. It's the weight that builds the muscle, right? That being said, too, a lot of times when we're going through this race, so to speak, we're just sort of paused, right? We stop
Mhm.
running. And I can personally relate to being paused in life, right? Like being stuck, or at least feels like you are. Be it, some people, it's like feeling like they're being paused romantically, or being paused emotionally, or even being paused in work, right? One of them that I can relate to currently is like in being a college graduate. I mean, I know it takes time, but looking for work in a particular climate for for the economy and stuff like that isn't always easy. You have this dream that when you graduate college, you instantly find a job and instantly find the work that you want in your dream job. But the reality is it's going to take time because you have to find that particular job that's going to work for you. When you're in that moment and you're paused, it feels like the world is colliding. You're going slow motion and everybody's sort of going, and you're just like, holy crap, what am I doing here? You know, and how I get sort of past this idea of like being paused, because we all have the moment where we're sort of sad, we're stuck, and we're like, man, like things aren't happening. I just try and remember that everything happens for a reason, and I try and tell myself that, hey, maybe I didn't get this job that I applied for because something would have happened. I have actually a perfect example. I applied to one Bungie Studios. It's a video game company. And I applied for a particular job there and I didn't get it. I was super sad. I was like, ah, man, I had all the, college experience. I feel like I would have been great for it. That being said, they laid off 100 employees like about a month or two later. So the fact that I didn't get it, who was going to get cut? This guy. He's got two thumbs and his name is Justin. You know, I would have been cut from that. So you have to sort of take that negative moment of being paused and maybe look at it from a different lens, that maybe you're sort of stuck for a reason. And it's maybe giving you that chance to recharge emotionally. Maybe you had a lot going on. Or maybe it's just because that job wasn't for you. Or maybe that significant other wasn't for you and you really wanted to be with them. And so, yeah, I mean, how do you feel, Autumn? And have you ever yourself been paused in life?
Oh, absolutely. I have a question, but I'll lead into it by
Yeah.
telling my own experience of being paused. I was married for 10 years with my ex for 14 years. And, at the point in life where I thought we're going to be buying a big house, we're going to be starting to have kids, we are instead talking about getting a divorce. And I had never been in the dating scene. I met my ex-husband when I was 14 and I was 27 staring down like staring at divorce papers. And I entered single life for the first time in my life ever at 28 years old. And it was really hard to be in the midst of a lot of my close friends at the time getting engaged and getting married and getting pregnant. And I felt like I was completely starting from scratch. And it was like I had 14 years invested in something that actually was all for naught. I had nothing to show for it in my perspective at the time. Obviously, now I think differently, but that kind of leads me into the question. There were times for me that I couldn't see the good in it. I couldn't because I had done everything right, essentially. I had, married my first love. I had stayed faithful to him. I had done all of these things and supported him, and I still ended up divorced. And I could not reconcile how that was the case. And there were times that I was just flat out angry. I was mad. I could not see the good in it. And it was really difficult waiting through those days because as much as, you have the days where you can put the shiny spin on it and you can say, well, like eventually it'll be for good. Eventually the right person will come along. Sometimes there's days where you're just like, F this. Like I did everything right and I can't see the good in this. So I say that to say, what ways did you find yourself in that kind of position? And if so, how did you cope with that? Or how did you get yourself out of it? Did you just allow yourself to process through it? Did you have tactics?
For me, I'm just perfect, and I never experienced that ever. No, I'm
Oh
just kidding.
man.
And end of podcast. We're
Okay,
wrapped up
bye
here.
guys. This is
I'm just
great.
kidding.
And we'll leave it to Squeaky Door to finish this out.
Squeaky, anything to say? Okay, nothing. Sorry.
Shut up, Squeaky.
No, yes, of course. I have a way of words, right? And sort of looking at the positive sense of life, and I could sit here and tell you guys everything that to sort of to say that, look, again, put the blinders on, don't worry, you're being paused, everything happens for a reason. That being said, I know it's easier said than done. And that also being said, that doesn't mean that I didn't go through the moments where I was like, I'm never getting out of this.
Mm.
It's like I've had my experiences where, yeah, I'm sitting there and I wake up one day and I'm like, yeah, I'm never going to find a job. I suck. You start going through the imposter syndrome. I don't
Yeah.
know how I graduated college. Um, what's that? Wanting to be a voice actor? No, no, no. I have a horrible voice. You sort of start, now self negatively just beating yourself to death, right? And
Hmm.
you're sort of, sitting there and you're digging yourself a hole, or because you're like, all right, this is my grave, better lay in it. And you're picking out coffins and everything of the such, right? um that being said, how did I get through it? I mean, a huge part of it was also support system. I have a lovely mother
Hmm.
and a father and friends and people that really care about me. And they'll, on my days where I'm sort of beating myself up, they sort of look at me and say, "Hey, like, don't worry." And it's still, when they're telling you don't worry, you're still going through this negativity and you don't want to hear it. But when sort of like the moment happens where everything sort of settles, you're like,
Mm.
oh, they're right. And then you sort of try to start shifting your perspective. Something else that really helps is sort of lying to yourself a little bit. When you don't.
Gaslighting yourself.
And here's what I mean by that. I'm not saying you're like, pretending someone that you're not, but in the moment, rather than sort of telling yourself, I'm never going to make it, lie to yourself and tell you, I got this. It's okay. It's going to be, even if you don't believe it, I don't care. Just lie.
You
Just
know,
lie. Because eventually you lie so much, you believe it. Go ahead.
I don't mean to cut you off, but
Mm.
I had a moment like that. It was, oh, maybe a year after my divorce. And as I said in the beginning, I'm a writer. And I had randomly met this guy who told me that he was a writer. He had a band, and I thought it was so interesting because where I come from or where I live currently, there's not many people who write. And so anytime I meet somebody who does, I try to get their number and I try to connect with them because I like having that contact. So, as I have always done, got his number. We were texting a lot just like about our creative processes. And he asked to go to coffee so that we can talk about everything. And I was like, absolutely, I would love that. So we go to coffee and I asked him, I was like, okay, so what have you written? And he told me, well, nothing, actually. He hadn't written, but he told me that he wanted to be a writer, and so he tells everybody that he is one because eventually he will become one, which isn't funny. It kind of goes along the lines of what you were saying, but in a sense, also, I was sitting there as someone who was a published author, and I kind of have imposter syndrome where when someone asks me what I do, I'm an executive assistant for an oil and gas company. It's not my first thing to tell you I'm a published author. Because I just like, I don't know why I don't feel like I'm entitled to that role yet, even though I technically am. But then to have somebody who had never done anything sitting there very boldly proclaiming he's a writer because that's what he wanted to be, I was like, you know what? If he can own that, I should definitely own that. And it kind of goes to actually our third subject, self-image. I had this idea of myself and I didn't fully connect with it. And I think being able to not just picture yourself as you are today, but also picturing yourself as you want to be and showing up every day as that person kind of goes back to even what you were saying of like lying to yourself or gaslighting yourself into believing it. Like, you don't become the person you want to be by continually doing the things that are keeping you where you're at. If the person you want to be wakes up at 5 in the morning to work out and spends an hour every morning writing, well, guess what? That's what you got to do. It's not just going to magically happen, you know? But I don't know. I think there's this translation that gets caught in, we have this idea of what we want to be, we have this other idea of who we think we actually are, and for some reason we don't think they're compatible. And so because of that, we become lethargic in trying to create our own dreams or to believe in ourselves instead of just like you said saying, you know what, I've got it. And even if I try it and it sucks today, I'll keep trying it until I am the best at it because it really is just a practice thing. There are people in this world who have the dream job that you want who are 10 times worse than you, but the only reason they have it is because they're putting in the effort and they're believing in themselves and they are seeing the potential that they have and they're striving towards it and they're just like seeing their self-image as something that is capable instead of something that isn't worthy. So I kind of went on a monologue right there, but I'm
No, no,
interested
you're
in your
fine.
thoughts on that.
I feel like I monologue all the time. so, so, don't be afraid to. That being said, yeah, being paused also then kind of leads into this idea of self-image, right? Sort of, what do you see yourself, right, when you look in the mirror? And you were saying this idea of like you have a published book, but you don't like calling yourself a writer. Funny enough,
Hmm.
when I see you, I always think writer. I don't think the other thing. Like maybe
I
it's
love that.
because I'm just a creative and sort of again I'm working on children's book and I consider myself a writer. I mean, I work with a great team. I have a writer, right? But
Hmm.
I'm like, even sometimes I go through, I'm like, well, I did co-writing, I did editing, you know what I mean? And you sort
Right.
of start like, downplaying yourself. But again, going back to that, I too sort of suffer for the same thing in terms of not just writing, but also, how would you say, voice acting. I look at
Hmm.
myself and I'm like, well, I don't have any of the big sort of commercials done or any sort of big health company or something like that. I haven't done any voiceover for it. It was all like relatively like mom and pop shops, or I've
Mm.
done some voiceover for indie video games and an indie animation, and sort of like you're just in the very indie small scale sense, but like you're saying is as that one guy had told you, he's like, I just lie to myself, I tell myself, and eventually it'll happen. I think you have to sort of look at yourself and just be like, when you're not feeling it, okay, I'm a voice actor, I'm a voice actor, I'm a voice actor. And maybe it helps to sort of just break down what you're good at too, right? Like
Hmm.
when I think of like, oh well, I could relatively understand how to break a script down, right? Or I could see how that could be written better, and I would write it something like this, or I would suggest that,
Hmm.
and sort of that kind of helps you sort of, um, how would you say, like shift, shift your mindset. That being
Mm-hmm.
said, sometimes like being paused, you start to also look at your genuine image, right? You're looking at yourself in the mirror and you're just like, what is this person? If you're a guy, like, what is this guy? Who is this guy standing in front of me, right? And I have a question for you. Is like, have you ever had moments of when you're staring at your self image, you're just like, I don't really like this, and or me, not this, but
Mm-hmm.
I don't like me, and what do you do to sort of shift out of that mindset, and maybe give us an example of a time that's happened.
That's a good question because I literally have spent the whole year doing that. And it kind of, a lot of it went back to the people that I was spending my time with. I had this social group that I love every one of them, but for lack of a better explanation, we just weren't compatible as people. And it was becoming more evident the more time I spent with them. And it was hard because I loved all of them and I had spent so much time with them already. But I just started to realize that I felt so depleted all the time. And I was finding myself in situations that I didn't like and I would never choose for myself. And they weren't bad. It was just, like I don't want to spend my Thursday nights at the bar until 2 a.m. Sometimes I do. Yeah, I mean, I literally did that last week for my work Christmas party. But every week I don't want to do that. I don't want to spend all of my weekends hungover, hating my life, questioning what I did the night before. And so I started just asking myself really hard questions, but further, I started being very honest in my responses. I wasn't replying to myself in the way that I wanted to be. I was replying to myself in what I was actually doing. And I had to sit there and take accountability with myself of, like, while you probably never would have been in that situation or done those things if you hadn't been hanging out with this group, you still allowed it and you still did participate in it, like gossiping or talking behind people's backs or just, being mean-spirited. And I hated that. I really hated that. And that was really, really hard to cope with because I think I'm someone who I struggle with shame to begin with. And so then when I feel like I'm in the wrong or I did something bad, I'm very hard on myself. But I, in the process of that, just started saying no to things that I knew were going to deplete me. And I started saying yes to things that maybe weren't so cool. Like let's grab tea on a Saturday instead of going to the bar that night. And let's be home by 9 p.m., but we're waking up early to go to the farmer's market. It's not that pretty, but it's things that align more with who I was. And it was getting back to those very simple, basic things that helped me get back to myself. And it's interesting. I don't completely credit him because we did break up, but I had dated a guy earlier this year who was so far outside of the life that I was used to that in order to be with him, I had to picture myself in my life so like in a way that I never had before. And whenever I did that, it gave me the ability to realize that this social scene or this crowd or this thought that I had about what my life should look like wasn't the end all be all. There were so many different possibilities that I could go down, and I had never thought about that before. And as soon as I like started thinking about that, and as soon as I opened my mind to, what, there's more out there. There's probably people who are better suited to my personality, better suited to the life that I want to live, who are going to support that and going to want to that for themselves too. That I was able to let go of that thing that I had been holding on to for so long for sake of the fact that I had just been friends with them for so long. And we all do it, oh, well, we've been friends with them for 5 years, or I've known them since childhood. And it's like, just because you have doesn't mean they're good for you. People get divorced over stuff like that. So yeah, I don't know if I fully answered your question, but I feel like this year has definitely been that for me. I mean, what is it, December 18th, finishing out this year in a completely different part of my life than I began. and I feel closer to myself and more at peace with who I am than I have in probably 15 years. It's crazy that I'm old enough to say 15 years and still have a life before then.
Yeah, no, I think you answered a lot of in terms of like looking at your self-image and being proactive in the way that saying yes to things that are you, you know,
Hmm.
and saying no to other things that aren't you, and sort of going out of your moment of like just being stuck and just stepping out of it, right? Yeah, you know, I in terms of also like self-image and not liking the way that you look is again, you know, you know, in terms of like because we're so negative towards ourselves, right? We look at ourselves. There's always an imperfection that we look at and whatnot. And it took a lot of years for me, from a young age to getting older, to stop sort of picking at my imperfections and just being okay with
Hmm.
maybe like I broke my nose like twice, and being okay that I have a broken nose, or being okay that I have a blemish, or whatever it is. It took me a while to be like, you know what, this imperfection, it's okay. I don't need to
Hmm.
fix certain parts of me because, you know, another thing that like really helps me like just dial in with myself is like knowing that we're all supposed to be uniquely ourselves and not supposed to be anybody else. I'm not supposed to be
Hmm.
you. You're not supposed to be me. Like I don't have to, you know what I mean? Like I don't have to look the way you do or talk the way you do or you know, I can be uniquely myself. It's okay. That's what makes us us. The
Hmm.
imperfections, the way that you know I sit or I walk funny or I may you know I pour milk in the bowl first and then cereal after. I know it's
That
weird
is
for a lot.
psychopathic behavior. Do you actually do that?
I do.
I am judging you for that.
Well,
Justin,
listen, you could judge me all you want.
you
Again,
should go to jail.
I'm okay with being uniquely myself.
Okay. I
I
am going
think
to practice what I'm preaching and accept you as you are.
that exactly. So, now my brain's sidetracking. Anyway, besides my
I'm
psychotic
sorry.
serial behavior, I'm okay
Yeah.
with being a psycho. That's me. It's Justin the
Okay.
psycho.
You know, I don't know who said this first, or maybe I don't know. Sometimes I have dreams and I have a hard time differentiating between my reality and if I dreamt it. But I think I heard this where just because somebody has something that you don't, it doesn't take away from what you do have. Right? Like there's always going to be somebody who's prettier, who has more money, who has more talent, but it doesn't take away from the fact that you also might have those things. Like if a beautiful woman walks in, that doesn't take away from the fact that you're maybe a beautiful man. Like just to each their own in that regard. Try to encourage yourself and build each other up. But man, yeah, that
Yeah.
we are really hard on ourselves.
Yeah.
I'm gonna digress a little bit and kind of touch back on what you said about having good people in your life. I am gonna dote on my John for a little bit, the most precious man I've ever met in my life. He is somebody that anytime we meet new people, and as people do, they always ask, "What do you do for a living?" And I have my same answer. I do this. And then John always says, "Well, what else do you do, Autumn?" And he wants me to say that I'm an author and that I wrote a book and all these things. And he has always done that because he knows that I'm too embarrassed, but he is very proud of the fact that I've done that. And he like wants to show that off. And he's very supportive in that. And just, he is so kind to me anytime I mess up or anytime that I am not my best self, that it like kind of shows that I can also be kind to me, which I don't think that's subjective just to romantic relationships. I think that those are friendships too. I definitely have a very solid group of girlfriends who have been very supportive of me in the 3 years that I've spent finding myself again. And all of them, when I've made stupid decisions that I shouldn't have done, or, just wasn't showing up as my best self, they've never once judged me. They've never been harsh. They've maybe said harsh things, but they've done it in kind ways that let me know that like I'm going to tell you something that you probably don't want to hear, but I'm going to do it in a way that you still know I love you. And it's so important to have those people. Oh no, I'm getting a FaceTime. I hope that did not go through.
No, no, it didn't.
It's so important to have those people in your life who just teach you to be kind to yourself because it's so hard to or it's so easy to be mean to yourself.
Yeah, like you're saying, choose the people in your circle, and I think I mentioned that again, like you were saying a little earlier. Um, be very picky about those individuals. You don't want yes people, right? But you want people
Yeah.
that are going to be a friend, right? Be somebody that you can count on. Somebody that, yeah, when you're wrong, they're gonna tell you you're wrong. When you're feeling bad about yourself and you feel like you're not, they're gonna be honest. They're gonna lift you.
Mm-hmm.
It's important to have those people, sort of cheering you on. And
I
yeah,
agree.
yeah, no, and
Yep. I was just gonna
go ahead.
add real quick and then I'll let you continue. People who do that but are also still kind. There's a quote, people who care about how they make you feel. And I've had so many relationships that say mean things and then tell me they only are mean to me because they love me. And I don't agree with that. I think that you can say very harsh truths and say it in a still kind way. And so I'm not behind the, oh, we just love you. That's why we're being so hard on you. Like, no, you can still be kind.
Yeah.
Obviously, there are times when you need to make stances, but for the most part, you shouldn't just be berating somebody verbally because you love them so much, you know? But I digress. I'm sorry. Maybe that's a short thing for me personally. I'm sure maybe other people have, but I'll let you go back to what you were saying.
Yeah, no, I was going back to sort of the discussion of having people that, are supportive and kind and caring and will be there for you, sort of no matter what is something that's really important.
Mm-hmm.
And definitely, I would love to even dive even deeper into this conversation. I'm sure we are going to in terms of a topic, even for a later podcast. So if we don't get to everything that we're sort of talking about for the listener at home, and you see something that's kind of interesting, you're like, I want you guys to talk more about that. Leave it in the comments down below if you want. But also, we're going to try our best to sort of make mental notes and circle back. Anyway, sort of continuing back to the topic at hand, is that sometimes we don't always have somebody. We don't have that
Mm,
significant other. We don't have that friend.
that's true.
Sometimes we don't even have that family member. So, what can you do? And that's when you know what, you have to really dig deep, right? And you have to work on certain things that kind of is leading into the next topic, self-care,
Mm,
self-love. And you have to evaluate yourself, right? You have to be sometimes, listen, life's like, here's another analogy for you. Life's like a boxing match, right? You're always fighting to sort of, stay in it. Round one, round two, round three. And family, friends, and people are like cheerleaders, right? They're like in your corner, sort of saying, "Yeah, go get them, right hook," you know, and sort of. So they're again they're cheering you on. But that being said, sometimes you're in your own corner,
mm,
and you have to sort of mentally prep yourself. You have to care for yourself. You have to love yourself. And part of doing that is like maybe sometimes you need to sit back. And we keep talking about self image and being paused and sort of being stuck. And, in order to sort of get out of any of those situations, you have to evaluate. Why am I
mm,
feeling this way? Well, I'm feeling stuck because I don't think I really am a creative producer or a writer. Well, why don't you feel that way? Oh, well, because people are more established. Okay, but can you do? Right? List a thing. Make a list of things that you can do and you can't, and sort of. I think that'll help you sort of evaluate yourself to say like, oh, I can do this, this, and this, and this, and maybe the things that you can't do. Well, how can I improve those? Right?
mm-hmm.
Self love. again, one of the things that I talked about was this idea of just being okay, being imperfect. You don't have to look like everybody. You don't have to, sound like everybody else or act like everybody else. It's okay you being you. And I want people to sort of tell themselves that, look at yourself, and even if you feel like you're lying, lie to yourself, look in the mirror and tell yourself, I'm okay, right? I'm beautiful. I am smart. I can do all things, right? And you keep telling yourself and build that self-esteem. And then self-care. Do things that make you happy. If drawing makes you happy, if you know what, going to the park, if playing a video game, something is like your own sort of happiness that's going to sort of boost you. Sometimes we're working 9 to 5s. You're saving for work or saving for bills, and it feels like it's never ending. Sometimes you got to have a little self care, and you got to
Hmm.
go out, get yourself a massage, get your hair done, buy that thing you always wanted. Go to the movies, do things that make you happy. Go out to eat, and care for yourself in that particular way. Because sometimes in life, and I know this is very true, and this is going to be very much a somber sort of saying, is like nobody cares about you like you. And so you yourself, again, you have to do these things: self love, self care, and just evaluate. What is your take, Autumn, on those sort of three particular topics?
That has been such a hard thing for me. My therapist repeatedly tells me, you need to practice self-compassion. And it's interesting because I consider myself a very empathetic person. I cry a lot. And it's easy for me to put myself in other people's shoes. And it's easy for me to think, well, like I'm going to give them the benefit of the doubt because of this or that. But I very rarely do that for myself. And kind of going back to what I said beforehand, I'm someone who my first thought of myself is to feel shame towards myself, which has been something that I've been working on for a while. And I mean, it's due to some past things that I'm sure we'll get into as the podcast progresses, but it's so hard to get out of feeling shame for yourself, for feeling that everything that you do is wrong or there's something intrinsically wrong with you, or if you mess up, it's because you're a terrible person. And I've had to rewire my brain where the times that I do mess up, even if it's tiny, like I would have so much shame about if I wore the wrong outfit to something, or if I ordered something wrong for some, like someone said they didn't want mayo on a sandwich. I would literally take, and they got mayo on their sandwich. I would take that and I would feel so guilty. Like, you should have been better. You should have done this because everybody else, like, and that says this about your character. This is why you don't have friends. This is why so and so is ignoring you. Like all of these things that are not true at all, but you get in your head and you just beat yourself up. And it has self-compassion for me, which I feel like kind of encompasses all of those things, is has been such a hard journey because it is so hard to look at myself and say that I deserve the benefit of the doubt as well. Which is funny because I crave it. I really, really crave for somebody, and thankfully I have people who have given it to me now, but for a time in my life I didn't, to have that benefit of the doubt, but also to give it to yourself. And it kind of is funny because it, for me, translated into taking care of my body. I was somebody who I'm very neurological. I like to be in my head. I'm an overthinker about most things. And to me, I was always like, my body is just the thing that carries my brain and my soul around. I didn't take care of it. I didn't treat it right because I didn't care for it as much. And whenever I started getting in the mindset where I was genuinely caring for myself, and that didn't happen until I started looking at myself as a little girl again, like reparenting, we can add that to the list of subjects that we should talk about. It's a very interesting subject that I think most people, no matter how amazing your parents are, most people need to reparent in some aspects. But looking at myself as a little girl and tending to that little girl and giving her the things that she needed. Even if the things that happened to me were things that happened as an adult, there was still a little girl in there that was very deeply wounded by that. And so then that kind of translated to like, you need to eat healthier. You need to work out more. You need to shower more. You need to, wash your clothes more. Just not that I was a complete degenerate, but
Hmm.
I was doing the very bare minimum. And I felt terrible about myself. And it really wasn't about the image I was portraying. It was just like my body hurt all the time. I didn't like the way that I looked. I didn't want to be in photos. I didn't want to look at myself. And it was because I just had all of that shame on me, and it was so exuding on the outside of my body that once I started digging through that and I started having that compassion and that self-love and self-evaluation, it manifested in me taking care of my outside body, which then manifested into me taking care more of my mental health, which I'd kind of already been on that journey. Just again, because of my past going to therapy, I very much put a lot of emphasis on my mental health, and I very wholly focused on that for a very long time, and then realized, like, it needs to translate into all of it. Because your body is a part of you. It's the whole package. You can't just cherry pick what you want to take care of, because eventually one will default. So yeah, I it's a process. And it's not linear, it's up and down, and it's frustrating as hell. I don't know if we can are we cussing on this podcast?
I mean, you can if you want.
I did it.
Anyway, I personally, normally I veer away from cursing, but
Okay.
anywho, you can if you want.
I'll
It
try
doesn't
not to
matter.
cuss too much.
No shame here. That being said, I do want to say that, a lot of these things that we talked about, it takes time. That's another thing that, going back to being paused, self image, right? Self care, self love, self evaluation, with all those things, is that it takes a lot of time and you have to be patient. One of the things that right now I'm currently learning with, going back to actually just being paused in life, is patience. Having to
Mhm.
be okay with waiting. Again, we're all in this race. We're all want to at least some. You see, I'm not worried about getting to success or where I want to go first. I just want to get there. That being
Mhm.
said, and I'm sure there are other people that are that way. Um, that being said, it's like you have to be patient, and nobody talks about it. We're always looking for quick ways to lose weight, to be mentally okay, to just be accepting ourselves or to end up in a relationship. And the reality of the matter is that nobody talks about just sitting and waiting sometimes. Sometimes you could do everything in your power, but all it takes is time. And let me tell you,
Mhm.
I know it seems like time moves fast, but we don't have a stamp on our foot, as my mother says. It's something she always told me about, always sort of like, like mashed in my brain, is that we don't have, there's no stamp on our foot saying that we got to do something by this date. We have time in life and sort of just take it day by day. Be okay with the situation you're in. And I know it's not always going to be the best situation, easier said than done, but learn patience. And
Mhm.
everything will come to you. Keep working hard, keep at it, don't give up. Success doesn't know whether you're late or early. It just knows that you showed up. Okay.
Mhm.
So, you know,
Consistency.
yeah,
I
consistency.
I'm gonna throw a caveat in there, as I'm sure you will agree. Unless abusive situations are involved, and then that in that situation,
Yes.
patience is not key.
Yeah. Patience in
Get
that
out of
particular,
there.
that's more action.
Yeah,
you
yes,
know,
yes. Get out of there.
And definitely, again, these are topics that we're going to discuss. I think that we're near the end, so I want to have some sort
Near
of
the end.
uh, some wrapping up thoughts here, right?
Okay.
I hope that first things first, I want to say that everybody has enjoyed the first episode of the podcast. If you did, please like, share, subscribe. You know, we gotta say this thing. Throw on the notificate the turn on the
The bell.
notification bell.
Hit the bell.
So that way you're informed whenever we sort of upload. Again, we don't have a particular schedule set. That being said, keep paying attention to our YouTube page. We're going to try our best to sort of, again, upload once a month. And then hopefully increase it more than that. It just all depends. So be patient with us, as I was talking about patience before. But I hope some of this stuff helped. Again, this is a lot of us just having conversation, digging deep into our inner selves, and allowing you to peek. I hope that this helps. I hope that again, we don't have the answers to everything. Maybe what I said wasn't that really great, but maybe what Autumn said to you resonated more, and that's okay.
I was gonna say the only thing you said that was a little questionable was your cereal method. I think you're gonna get
Listen,
attacked for that.
feel free. It doesn't hurt. It doesn't hurt me. Okay. Again, I'm perfectly perfect. I pour milk first, then cereal. I don't want soggy cereal. All right. I don't like the
I mean,
sog.
how long are you waiting before you eat it?
It's just like, I like to, okay, here's the thing. It's like I submerge the cereal, but I like to choose when I submerge it, okay? It's a part of this control complex of having
Okay.
some semblance of control in my life where I tap the cereal down and you kind of
Okay.
like soak it up a little and then you eat it. But
Okay.
I like to take my time with cereal, okay? I don't want it to be a soggy, wet mess. Some people don't like the
I'm
word moist, and I don't like
that is true.
moist cereal.
Okay. Moist. One more time. Moist.
Moist cereal.
Moist. I'm really hoping my cat meows right now. Do you see her face?
Yeah, she's like, I'm
She's freaked out. She is.
we currently have our
She
pets in
doesn't
the
like
room,
moist.
so if you hear any pet bark or meow,
It's all
apologies.
Justin.
Yeah, well, yeah, it's actually all me. You know me, I have a farm at my house. That being said, I think we're gonna wrap it up here. I do want to pass the question off to you guys. How do you? What's an instance you guys been sort of paused in life? How do you self care, self love, and self evaluate? And what do you think of your self image? That being said, let's be nice. Let's be kind out there. Let's love every one another. And welcome to
Be nice.
the space, J Space. Any closing
J-Space.
words, Autumn?
J-Space.
Well, there you go.
We need someone to sing a song.
Yeah, actually, I that actually reminded me. I hope you guys do love the song because it was developed by the one and only wonderful, beautiful Jordan Blum. Of course, he did a wonderful job. I hope you guys like the acoustics. And our art was designed by Kyle Hendriks. So I hope you show him some love. I'm gonna have his link in the
Thanks,
description.
Kyle.
He's gonna be doing all the art for us. So thank you guys again for tuning in. Love yourself, be kind, and I hope you guys have a beautiful day. All right.
Yeah.
Bye.
Bye.